Okay, ang time check natin, 50 minutos na pasado po alas 6. Okay, araw ng ano ba ito? Martes. 20 po ng Pebrero. Okay, 2024 mga suki, no? Okay, magandang gabi sa inyo. Good evening mga kaibigan. Okay, mga suki-suki natin sa news natin, Consolidated News, no? Okay, dito lang po sa platform, okay, ng ADLSNTV News Corporation. Hindi kasi masasabi natin na sa no, parang yung mga FM station kasi sa atin na platform lang ang ginagamit, no? Okay, application. Okay. Tumulo ang luha ko kanina po nanonood. Okay, sa pag-hearing po, public hearing po ng Baselco. Kasi ang general manager yan, first cousin ko mga kababayan, no? Okay, tatay ko at saka nanay niya magkapatid. And then, nauna lang ata sa mga isang taon nag-aral sa akin, no? Kasi nauna siya nag-graduate ng elementary school. Okay, sa Sumisip dati elementary school. Okay, sa panahon po ni Ma'am Jeracia Budiman, ngayon ni Francisco na po mga kababayan, no? Okay, siya po nagmulat ng mata namin lahat po taga Sumisip. Yan. And then naabutan kami na siya mga suki, no? Okay. Ayan. Okay, insan primo o pinsan. Okay, punta ka rito sa Buanga, magkwentuhan tayo mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, awang-awa ko, naturete na. Okay, sa kasasagot, no? Okay, nakapaalam na ba ako? Naka-introduce na ako ng programa ko. Dito po sa Luhado Special Opinion Balita Tibapa, Serbisyo Publiko Tinig ng Mamamayan. And then, ugnayan po ng mamamayan, no? So, gusto ko makipag-ugnayan po, okay, sa aking primo. Pinsan po si General Manager Joseph Durapan, no? Okay. I-rescue kita kung kinakailangan po mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Blood is thicker than water. Ayan. So, kung may panahon ka, makipagkita ka sa akin o kung gusto mo, punta ka rito sa studio ko. Magpaliwanag ka. Ayan po mga suki, mga kababayan. Naturete na halos hindi na po makasagot ang aking pinsan. Okay, sa paggisa po ng House of Representative, okay, pinamunuan din ng aking pinsan din. Okay, si Congressman Mujib Hataman, no? Ayan. Okay, hindi po kasalanan niya lahat yan, no? Marami pa nauna po mga GM, hindi lang siya. Okay? Maraming GM nauna. Ayan. Kung meron siya kasalanan man, halimbawa, pero hindi sa kanyang kasalanan, problema po ng Baselco. Okay, kaya nagkakanyang-ganyan mga suki, no? Okay, insan, mag-retire ka na, tama na. Okay, mag-relax na tayo. Parehas na tayo retire. Retired na rin ako, insan, no? Matagal na. Nauna po ko sa iyo mag-retire. Ayan po, masasabi ko lang sa pinsan ko, no? Okay. Masakit man. Kasi dugo mo yan. Okay, mga suki, mga ayan. Talagang,
interest na babayaran sa inyo.
okay, ito talaga, no?
So,
Okay.
ibig sabihin, mula sa simula,
Ito.
ang binabayaran lang ni Baselco.
Sige.
So, ibig sabihin, mula sa simula, ang binabayaran lang ni Baselco, mas sa interest na pupunta pati yung miscellaneous.
Yes, sir. Sa case po ni Baselco, it's only interest and principal. So, ang nababayaran niya, fully nababayaran niya po is only the interest.
Ang interest, ano, ma'am?
Yung interest niya po, sir, yun yung nababayaran niya na full. Kasi,
Kaya,
yes,
so si principal, lumalaki ng lumalaki.
yes po.
Si interest, lumalaki ng lumalaki rin.
Yes po. Kaya, lumalaki ang interest, tapos pag nagbabayad siya, syempre po doon na napupunta sa interest, and then konti lang po ang napupunta sa principal, so dadagdag po ulit yung interest nito sa...
Ma'am, sa tagal no ng Baselco, sa utang sa inyo, magkano na ang total amount ng interest na babayaran sa inyo at magkano ang principal na nababayaran?
Based po dito sa records na dala ko, from 2003 to 2020, January 2024, ang total na interest na nababayaran ni Baselco is 2.2 billion.
2.2 billion?
Yes po.
Putsa naman. Tapos ang principal magkano?
Sa principal po, since 2002 to January 2024, ang application sa principal po is only 825 million.
Ma'am, Sinapocor ba government agency or private?
Government.
po.
Hindi,
Government.
kaya ako tinatanong kasi, sobra pa kayo sa pawn shop. Parang hindi mama, kung 3.7 billion, 3.6 billion ang utang, tapos 2 ano nang nababayaran sa interest?
2.2.
2.2, i-minus mo yan, dapat 1.4. So, ibig sabihin, dapat wala nang utang si Baselco sa inyo. Dahil napupunta sa interest eh.
Yes po.
Tapos sabihin nyo, tama ba yung pagkarinig ko kanina, ang principal na utang ni Baselco ngayon, magkano?
3.4 as of December 31, 2023 po. 3.4 billion po.
3.4 billion?
Yes, sir.
Principal lang to.
Yes, sir. Principal. Wala pa po dyan ng interest and VAT.
Good. Wala akong masasabi. Ano yun, nag-iisip ang Sinapocor? Kasi kahit i-condone mo ang interest, ang utang niya nasa 3.1 billion. Kasi nga, ang binabayaran ni Baselco mula sa simula is interest nasa 2 point something na, di ba?
Yes, Your Honor. Actually po, nag-accumulate din po talaga, Your Honor, kasi po, yung current power bill niya, hindi niya rin po nababayaran ng 100%. So, nag-accumulate po siya doon sa overdue niya po, doon sa mga previous months, previous years niya po.
Ma'am, bakit hindi principal ang unahin nating ayusin para hindi kawawa si Baselco? Kasi sobra pa kayo sa bangko eh. Si bangko, pag mag-loan ka, pag magbabayad ka ng monthly, ang programming niya, nababawasan si principal, nababawasan si interest. Pero Sinapocor, si interest lang at lumalaki ang principal. Pag lumalaki ang principal, lumalaki rin ang interest.
Tama.
Your Honor, dahil kasi yun doon sa aming credit and collection policy. But sa credit and collection policy namin, so sinusunod po namin yun. Pero, yes, sir.
Si board ng Napocor.
Yes, sir. Currently po, we're on the ongoing revision and updating of our credit and collection policy. And we are harmonizing our credit and collection policy with PISAM. So,
ito pa ang isang pasyalan na hindi pa masyad.
So, ibig sabihin,
Tama na po mga suki, no? So, yun po ang pandinig po sa HOR kanina. Okay, pinamunuan po ng aking pinsan mula sa nanay naman. Okay, at itong si Congressman Mujibata. Sa nanay siya. Ang sa kay GM naman sa tatay. Ang tatay ko at saka nanay niya magkapatid, mga sukin. Sabay kami magpunta sa Manila. Okay, kwento ko lang pa kahit paano, no? Siya ay katulong po sa isang general. Okay, si General Lisandro Abadia, no? Wala na. Okay, naging chief of staff yon. Anak-anakan po niya ito si Mr. Dusid Durapan, no? General Manager Dusid Durapan. Matagal po hanggang magkolehiyo doon po siya kay General Sandro Abadia, no? Kaya nga, kilala yan. Okay. So, nauna lang siya mag-aral sa akin, then kinuha niya ako. Hindi ko makalimutan yon. Ang pera ko lang pumunta sa Manila, 270 lang, mga suki, no? Ay tama lang pamasahe po ng, ano ba yung sinakyan natin na insan? Okay, tatlo tayo ni James Dinil. Okay, ano bang sinakyan namin nung kapal na yon? So, magkano ang pamasahe? 70 pesos. So, 270 ang pera ko, magkano natira? So, yan po ang kasaysayan ko, magpunta ng Manila. Okay, bilihan po ng kambing. Okay, ng aming namayapa na rin ng auntie ko. Siya, buburang siya, mga kababayan, no? Hindi ko makalimutan yon na insan. Okay? Hanggang ngayon, inaalala ko yun. Kanina, halos nahulog ako sa upuan ko sa dinig kanina, no? Yung ipit sa'yo, halos hindi mo na masagot, mga kababayan, no? Halos hindi mo na masagot. Okay? Ang tanong sa'yo, no? So, para sa akin, okay, hindi kasalanan mo lahat. Kung lagi brownout ang basel ko, hindi mo kasalanan. Marami pang nauna sa iyo, mga general manager, no? Ayan. So, ayan po ang masabi ko lang sa iyo. Okay, mag-retire ka na, tama na. Okay, pahinga ka na, parehas na tayo matanda, insan. Ayan. Mag-retire ka na. Dapat pahinga ka na, tama na. Okay, pag may problema ka, nandito ang pinsan mo, okay, mag-rescue sa iyo, mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, ayun, hindi ko na ikukwento kanina lahat ng mga pandinig. Basta, tumulo pang luha ko, mga suki, no? Naalala namin yung mga unang panahon. Okay, yung paghihirap namin, paano makapag-aral. Ako ang magtrabaho ko sa parking lot. At saka mag-security sa gabi, mga suki, no? Para lang makatapos ng high school and then mag-college hanggang umuwi po rito sa bayan namin. Pero ngayon na napadpad ako sa Zamboanga. Hindi na ako doon po sa Sumisip Municipality, no? Dito na ako sa Zamboanga napadpad. Okay? So nagkaroon kami ng 3 bahay dito sa Zamboanga. Okay, sa mga anak ko, hindi yun sa akin. Ayan po, mga suki, mga kababayan, no? So, yan ang kasaysayan na hindi makalimutan. Mga passage of time. Okay, mahirap po, mga suki, no, ikukwento. Okay, alila, katulong siya sa bahay. Ako naman ng security. And then hugas po ng mga kotse doon sa parking lot, mga kababayan, para makapag-aral. Ayan. Kaya hindi ako nahiya magsabi po, no? Okay, kahit sino pa dyan, hindi ako mahiya magsabi na ganun po ang dinanas namin dyan sa Metro Manila, no? Okay? Lagi yan, ang pinsan ko doon sa bahay namin, kubo-kubo ko sa Taguig. Lagi yan pumupunta roon, no? Kaya hindi ko rin siya makalimutan. Kasi ang magbukas, maliban sa Allah Ta'ala ng kapag-aral ko, siya po, mga suki, yung si GM Dusid Durapan, no? Siya nagbukas. Kaya nakatapos ako na mag-aral, no? Ayan. So, yan po ang mga sentimento natin po sa buhay. So, magpasalamat tayo. Ay hanggang ngayon buhay pa rin, mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay. So, handa ang itong pinsan mo? Ang pobreng pinsan mo, handa magtulong sa iyo kung may problema ka, insan. Ayan. Okay, grabe po, mga suki, na. Okay, ganun po ang buhay. Okay, pag exit mo, pa-exit ka na. Okay, hanggat maaari iwanan mo na itong okay, ang basel ko na yan. Tama na. Okay, ano ito? Okay, hindi naka-register. Sige po mga suki mga kabayan, magpatuloy tayo ng balita. Ito po mga suki, no? Ayan. Ayan. So, ganun lang ang buhay, no? Okay, pa-exit ka na, nagkaroon ka pa ng problema, wag na sana po mga suki, no? Okay, katulad pa-exit ako, wala akong problema po. Okay, tanggap ko ang pension ko kaagad dahil retire na ako. Okay, so ganun po. Hindi ako nagkaroon ng problema pag-exit ko. Okay, sa mahabang panahon po magtrabaho mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, sige.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Ayan. Okay. Sobra ang napokor. Sobra pa sa pawn shop at saka itong bangko. Ayan po mga suki, no? Sige. Okay, sa speech po ni President Barack Obama, no? Sige, pakinggan natin naman kung ano ng lecture niya ito kasi professor ito.
The strong significance and symbolism of what is happening here in Soweto today does not escape you. There really are no two occasions in recent time that have had a more profound impact on the African people than when Nelson Mandela walked out of prison, a free man, in 1990, and of course, the election of Barack Obama in 2008. Now, these two men are politicians, and their legacies will be judged by history. But there's absolutely no doubt that these two developments in history have had a profound impact on the African continent. They have brought hope in Africa and also began the process of restoring pride and dignity in the African people. Now, as I speak to you, and as you all know, President Nelson Mandela is lying in hospital, critically ill. The euphoria that engulfed this continent when President Obama was elected is fading. But in this room, look around you, is Africa's brand new hope. These young people are doing amazing things in their communities. They have already been identified as leaders, and leaders who are committed to serving others and not themselves. Exactly 37 years ago this month, young school children here in Soweto braved apartheid bullets fighting for freedom. It's no coincidence that a new generation of young people is here today. And like the 76th generation, they refuse to conform, but are inspired to transform their world. When President Obama launched the Young African Leaders Initiative in 2010, he described them as the Africa that is overlooked. Well, at this moment, the world can see and hear you. President Obama will come here, address you, and then engage you. We will take a question here in South Africa before we cross to Kenya, Uganda, and then Lagos, Nigeria. When the president selects you, please be proud. Introduce yourselves and ask a short, sharp, smart question. As a fellow African, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for keeping hope alive in Africa. Please join me in welcoming on stage the 44th President of the United States of America, Barack Obama.
Hello, everybody. Yebo Manzazi. It is wonderful to be back in South Africa. Everybody have a seat. Everybody have a seat. Relax. Yeah, I'm excited too. It is wonderful to be here with all these extraordinary young people, young people from across this magnificent country, but also from all across the continent. And I want to give special thanks and special welcome to those who are watching from Nigeria and Uganda and Kenya.
Okay, bakit natigil?
A country obviously very close to my heart. You know, when I travel around the world,
This is one of my favorite things to do. Meeting and talking with young men and women like you. And our format today, this town hall is a long-standing tradition in America. And I get asked all sorts of things. I remember one event, a person asked a question that's often on a lot of people's minds when I show up. Where's Michelle? Sometimes people ask me, you seem to have gotten so old since you were elected. What happened? So this format can be a little humbling, but it energizes me because it gives me a chance to hear from you directly, what you're thinking, what you care about, what your vision is. And I'm making this trip to Africa because I believe this is a region on the move. Even as this continent faces great challenges, and they are great, and we can't paper over them or pretend that those challenges don't exist. Even as too many Africans still endure tremendous hardship and great injustice, there is, as the song says, a new Africa, more prosperous, more confident, taking its place on the world stage. And one of the reasons is because of your generation. And it's fitting that we gathered here in Joburg, in Soweto, because here we learned that history is in our hands. Not far from here, in Orlando West, two young men came of age who would transform this nation and inspire the world. Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. And President Mandela once said that during all those years in that cell, it was his home here in Soweto, that small red brick house. That was what he called the center point of my world. And obviously, he's on our minds today. And we join the people of the world in sending our prayers to Madiba and his family because he still inspires us all. Now, not far from here, on a June morning, young students gathered in peaceful protest for the right to be taught in a
Okay, mahina ang internet, no? Tayo natin lumakas. Ayan.
language, for the right to be treated like human beings. And after all the police bullets, after the smoke cleared, the world was shocked by that image. Protesters holding the body of a young boy, Hector Peterson. And what a powerful tribute it is to Hector's sacrifice and to all who struggled that we can gather here today in a free South Africa, at a university that serves all South Africans. And I know the story of Soweto inspires you in your lives, but keep in mind it inspired me too. The uprising here helped open my mind to a broader world and to our responsibilities to choose between fairness and injustice, between right and wrong. And as a senator, during my first visit to South Africa, I was able to go to Hector Peterson's memorial and pay tribute to an African boy who moved the world. And humbled by the sacrifices of all who've gone before us, so that we can stand here as free men and women. I'm honored to return to Soweto now as President of the United States of America. Now, tomorrow I'll be down in Cape Town at the University of Cape Town, and I'll speak about the future that we can build together, Africans and Americans. And that's where Robert Kennedy delivered his eloquent address to another generation of young people. The challenges of our world, he said, demand the qualities of youth. Not a time in life, but a state of mind. A temper of the will, a quality of the imagination, a predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the love of ease. That's what young people are. That's the spirit of youth. And it's still true. And that's why 3 years ago I launched a new effort to make sure we're tapping those qualities of youth. The imagination, the courage, the yes we can attitude of young Africans like you. It's our Young African Leaders Initiative, and I kicked it off by welcoming young men and women from across Africa to the White House, and we had a town hall similar to this one. I think some of you were there, in fact. And since then, we've helped empower young people across this continent with new skills in entrepreneurship and leadership, and new partnerships in education and health and technology. Now, Michelle came here to Soweto for a forum with some inspiring young women. And she's here today in Josie, meeting with students who... Meeting with students who, like you, are going to determine the future of your countries. So today, I'm proud to announce a significant expansion of this initiative. We're launching a new program that's going to give thousands of promising young Africans, like you, the opportunity to come to the United States and develop your skills at some of our best colleges and universities. It's called the Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders. And I hope all of you apply, because we're joining with our top schools, public and private. We'll focus on civic leadership and public administration and business and entrepreneurship, the skills you need to serve your communities and start and grow businesses and run effective ministries. And you'll interact with Americans from all walks of life, because our citizens, especially our young people, can learn from you too. You'll meet with leaders in business and nonprofits and government, including me. And I look forward to welcoming you at a summit that I'll host in Washington, because I want to hear directly from you, your hopes, your dreams, what we can achieve together. And your time in America will be just the beginning. When you come back home, new grants will help you turn your ideas into new businesses and new nonprofits. And we're going to partner with American companies here in Africa to provide internships and mentoring and job opportunities to help you grow into the next generation of business leaders. We're going to partner with your governments and regional organizations here in Africa, and foundations and civil society, to amplify your voices as you stand up for democracy and equality. And with the connections you make as a Washington Fellow, you'll have something else for the rest of your life. And that is a network of Africans and Americans ready to collaborate on the future that you want to build. So this won't be the most expensive program that we have, but I actually believe this is going to end up being one of the most important. And it's important to me personally, because it's a great way for me to show my faith and confidence in all of you. I believe in you, and I intend to make this a lasting part of our engagement with Africa beyond my presidency for years to come. We want to empower entrepreneurs like Fred Swaneker. Where's Fred? He's from Ghana. So, Fred's got a fan club over here. Fred helped to start a biotech company and now uses his expertise to help other young Africans develop their leadership skills so that they can come back and put those skills to use serving their communities, starting businesses, creating jobs. So thank you, Fred, for the great work that you're doing. We want to empower citizens like Khadija Patel. Where's Khadija? Where's Khadija? So, Khadija is a fearless journalist here in South Africa. She's reported on Sudan and Mali and the Democratic Republic of Congo. She's exposed the roots of conflict. She's challenged leaders as a voice for peace and justice. So we're very proud of the work that you do, Khadija. Thank you. We want to empower advocates like Jacob Jabari. Where's Jacob? Right here. So, here in South Africa, Jacob decided he was not going to hide the fact that he was HIV positive. He embraced it. He became a counselor. He helps guide others because he says the key to saving lives and slowing the spread of AIDS is an honest approach. And that takes great courage. Thank you, Jacob. And we want to empower women like Lebu Bogipane. Lebu. You know, growing up, Lebu endured domestic abuse and violence, which led to homelessness and hunger. Over many years, she didn't simply rebuild her own life. She built a crisis center here in South Africa that's helped thousands of women and children escape abuse as well. What a great legacy. Thank you. So, building the future that you seek, realizing the vision that you have, not just for your own countries, but for the world, it will not be easy. It will not be easy. But as you go forward, I want you to think of the man who's in our prayers today. Think about 27 years in prison. Think about the hardships and the struggles of being away from family and friends. Reflecting on his years in prison, Nelson Mandela wrote that there were dark moments that tested his faith in humanity, but he refused to give up. And he said, "I'm fundamentally an optimist. Whether it comes from nature or nurture, I cannot say. Part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed towards the sun, one's feet moving forward. So in your lives, there will be time to test your faith. But no matter how old you grow, I say to all of you today, don't lose those qualities of youth. Your imagination, your optimism, your idealism. Because the future of this continent is in your hands. And if you keep your head pointed towards the sun and you keep your feet moving forward, I promise you will have no better friend and partner than the United States of America." Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. So now I get to do what I really want to do, which is to hear from you. So why don't we open up for questions, and I understand that we've got somebody from South Africa here first.
Yes, the plan is to get somebody here in Soweto before we move across to other parts of the continent.
Okay.
The choice is yours, Mr. President.
This is a good-looking group. Now call on this young lady right here. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, President Obama. My name is Musa. I'm an attorney and I'm passionate about telecoms in Africa. My question is the African Growth and Opportunities Act. The term expires in 2015, and I understand there's a bill which provides for an extension to 2019. Do you think this bill will be passed? And if it isn't passed, what do you think the impact will be on small states in Africa that are benefiting, such as Lesotho and Togo?
It's a great question. By the way, what kind of law are you practicing?
Oh, right now I actually do cross-border African work.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. For those of you who are not as familiar with it, the program we call AGOA is basically a trade arrangement that allows probably 95% of goods from Africa to come into the United States without tariffs, duty-free. And as a consequence, it obviously gives African exports a greater advantage. And the whole idea is that, historically, if you look at the relationship between Africa and the rest of the global market, dating back to colonial days, the idea was somehow that raw materials get sent somewhere else, they get produced somewhere else or refined somewhere else. Sometimes they're sold back to Africa, but the jobs, the value, the profits are all someplace else. And we graduated from those colonial times to the idea of aid, which continues to be critically important. There are parts of Africa where right now people just need food, or right now people just need medicine. And it is the obligation of wealthier nations to help deliver that food or that medicine. But everywhere I go in Africa, what's very clear is people want to break out of a dependency trap. The idea is not that Africa somehow should be the ward of some other country. What we need is an Africa that is building, manufacturing, creating value, inventing, and then sending those products around the world and receiving products in return in fair terms of trade. And if we do that, then there's no reason why Africa cannot succeed. So part of what I'm trying to highlight during this trip is the enormous opportunities for an Africa that is intimately integrated into the world market. I want small and medium-sized businesses and entrepreneurs and startups here in Africa to see their potential not just in the local market, but to be able to sell goods and services all around the world, and to bring those profits back to Africa and reinvest in Africa and hire Africans. And so as part of that, we want to make sure that the United States is a critical trading partner. And by the way, we're not doing it out of charity. We're doing it because if Africa is doing well, then now we've got a market of people who want to buy more iPads and Boeing airplanes and all the good stuff that we sell, right? And Africa, by the way, is the youngest continent, which means that demographically, this is going to be a larger and larger share of the world market. So specifically in terms of AGOA, you're right. The current AGOA structure expires in 2015. It is my hope that we get it renewed. Now, what I mentioned to President Zuma today, and I said this at a press conference, is that we will have to engage in some negotiations to find ways to both improve what we're currently doing, but also to reflect on the fact that South Africa is becoming more and more successful. And that U.S. businesses, in order for me to get it through Congress in the United States, U.S. businesses have to feel as if they're getting a level playing field relative to, for example, some of the European companies who are able to operate here, because there's a free trade agreement between Europe and the United States. But I'm confident that with good negotiations, that we should be able to get it done. the broader point I want to make, though, is that the future is going to be in creating value here in Africa, and making sure then that, like, Southeast Asia and China and Turkey and all these other places around the world, that everybody is starting to see the benefits of global trade patterns. And Africa cannot just be a source of raw materials for somebody else. It has to be a source of the kinds of products and services and imagination that is going to be the future of the 21st century. All right? Thank you. So,
We have a young person in Kenya who has a question for you. Kenya, you ready? There we go.
Kenya, you ready?
Indeed. Thank you, South Africa. You are watching us broadcasting to you live from Nairobi here in Kenya's capital. And indeed, I'm joined by 8 young Kenyans who have come in from 5 different counties within the country. Quite excited. I think I speak for all of them when I say that indeed it's an honor to be able to engage with you, Mr. President, directly during this program. And I'll just get right to it and give an opportunity for one of the Kenyans who is with me here in studio to be able to ask a question to you, Mr. President. Margaret, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Catherine. Jambo, habari yako, Bwana President. We are honored to be with you live today this afternoon from Nairobi, Kenya. Our question to you really is, given the recent shift of trade ties of Kenya to the east, how does this impact on American foreign policy towards Kenya? And does the ICC indictment of our president and his deputy prevent the US from engaging with Kenya both politically and economically? In addition, Mr. President, many Kenyan youth would like to know, what are your thoughts and plans on youth empowerment and the devolved structure of governance to Kenya? Thank you.
Now, Mr. President, as you prepare to respond to that question, I'm sure you're alive to the fact that there has been a lot of speculation in the Kenyan media and also in the social media over your reasons for not visiting Kenya on your second tour of Africa. Maybe if you recall in an interview that you did have with this channel, that is way back on 1st of June 2010, you did a promise that during your tenure as President of the United States of America, you will be touring Kenya. Well, will you still keep your word on that?
Asante sana. It's wonderful to see all of you. First of all, let me just say that I'm going to be president for another 3.5 years. So, one of the things that you learn as president is not only do people want you to fulfill your promises, but they want you to fulfill your promises yesterday. And part of the reason that I wasn't able to visit Kenya this time is I've been to Kenya multiple times, and there hadn't been a sustained visit by me in West Africa. And then South Africa, given the importance of the work that we're doing together. Tanzania is a country I hadn't visited before. So I was trying to spread the wealth a little bit in terms of my visit. But what's also true, I won't deny, is that Kenya just had an election. I was very proud to see the restraint in which the election was held. We did not see a repeat of the violence that we saw in the last election. But with the new administration that's also having to manage some of the international issues around the ICC, I did not think it was the optimal time for me to visit. But as I said, I've got 3.5 years. So if in 3 years and 7 months I'm not in Kenya, then you can fault me for not following through on my promise. You raised the issue of whether our attitudes towards Kenya changed because of Kenya's orientation towards trade and commerce with the East. And this was asked of me before. It's a general question that I get during this visit. People saying, well, China's here a lot. Is this what's motivating America to want to be more involved? And I want to make 2 points. First of all, our commitment to Africa is based on our belief in Africa's promise and Africa's future, and we want to be part of that future. Second of all, I think everybody should be involved in Africa. I want China, and I want India, and I want Brazil, and I want Singapore, and well, everybody come on down to Africa, because 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world are right here in Africa. You are seeing a shift inside of Africa in which a commitment to democracy and transparency is beginning to take hold. I just visited Senegal, where President Sall has embarked on a reform agenda, including, by the way, shortening his term from 7 years to 5 years. And a belief that, for example, members who join the government need to disclose their assets, just basic measures that can help to root out corruption. And so when you start seeing these changes, everybody should be excited about wanting to do business here in Africa and doing business with Kenya. Now, what I said during the press conference today, I want to repeat, which is I want to make sure that as countries come to Africa, that it's benefiting Africans. So if somebody's building a road here in Africa, make sure they're hiring some Africans. If there's going to be manufacturing taking place of raw materials, locate some of those plants here in Africa. And so I do want to make sure that whoever you're dealing with, and as you enter into government and business, whoever you're dealing with, making sure that you're getting a good deal that's benefiting the people here and can help to spur on broad-based development. And hopefully that's the kind of relationship that you'll be able to develop with the United States of America. And that's the kind of relationship I want Kenya to have with every country on earth. We're in a global economy with a global supply chain. And I don't want Africa to continually just be at the bottom of the supply chain. You produce the raw materials sold cheap, and then all the way up the chain, somebody else is making the money and creating the jobs and the value. So part of what your generation's challenge will be is making sure that, first of all, you have a transparent, accountable, non-corrupt, open government. Because economic development is not going to happen in the absence of that kind of certainty. That's what businesses want. They don't want to have to pay a bribe just to get phone lines installed in their business. They don't want to have to hire somebody's cousin just to open a business. And we have to be honest about it. In a lot of countries, that's still the case. And that discourages investment. And then as you move into positions of power, I want to make sure that you're negotiating a good deal with these other countries. Now, it's got to be realistic. It's got to be based on what assets do you bring to bear. And initially, at least in some countries and in some regions and parts of Africa, you're looking at a certain type of manufacturing or a certain type of industry that may not be very capital intensive, for example, because there may not be as much capital initially to invest. So it may start at a smaller scale, but continually upgrading and improving the prospects for Africa, I think, will require that kind of tough, hard-headed negotiations. But I want every country to be here. Last point, on Kenya, I already made this for all countries. Yes, I want young people to be involved in holding their governments accountable. Now, there is a lot of variety here in Africa in terms of quality of governance. And I don't want to reinforce for the American press that are here this attitude that Africa is just one big, piece of land on the map, right? So there's a lot of variation. Some countries are doing great work when it comes to accountability and democracy and an active civil society and a free press and freedom of assembly. And some countries are not doing as well. But what's exciting right now is you're starting to see more and more a norm, a standard take hold in Africa. And young people, I think especially, have high expectations about how government should function, and it should function for the public good, not for the benefit of just a few. And people should be able to speak their mind, and they should be able to organize without fear of retribution. And they should be able to cast a ballot without problem. And South Africa, I think, has been a great model. This is one of the greatest legacies of Nelson Mandela. It is to show that through a commitment to the Constitution and rule of law and equal treatment for all people, that a country can prosper despite a tragic history. And the same should be true in Kenya, which is why I was heartened that the process of the last election at least did not result in chaos. And that should be true for every country. And President Zuma said something important today at the press conference, and I'm going to see what we can do to work with them. The African Union, I think, is trying to create sort of a peer review system so that it's not just the United States coming in and lecturing some African country that's not observing democracy. It's fellow Africans who are saying, what are you doing? Why are you suppressing your people? Why are you throwing political dissidents in jail? Why are you blocking people's ability to organize new political parties? And when peers are organizing in that fashion, then slowly standards get raised and new norms are established. And all of you can be at the forefront of that. So thank you, Kenya. Thank you.
We are going to stay in East Africa and take a question from Kampala, Uganda.
Kampala.
Hello from Kampala in Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, as we're known. I'm Nancy Kachingera, a news presenter with NTV Uganda. And Uganda is a very youthful nation. More than half of our population is actually under the age of 15. I'm here today with a group of vibrant and dynamic young people. And as you can see, they are very excited to be addressing President Obama today and asking him a question. Now, I've had the chance to interact with the young people here today, and they're all great young leaders in their own right. And they all have different backgrounds and different experiences. But I found that one of the things they do have in common is their passion for a better Uganda and for a better Africa. Mr. President, one of them is now going to ask you a question on behalf of the rest of the group. It's an honor. My name is Irene Ikomo, and my question comes on behalf of everyone seated here with me. Unfortunately, it's also regarding trade. Mr. President, as young Ugandan leaders, we are looking to the world for equal business partners and commitments, and not necessarily aid. We are not looking for donors. And yet, Mr. President, the policy you've just described right now seems to emphasize help coming in from the US, but emphasizing offering jobs and employment within the countries that they come into. As young leaders, Mr. President, we want to do the businesses at home and be the ones to own our home markets. So how do you, Mr. President, plan on assisting us in reframing the U.S. policy to achieve this vision?
Well, with respect to U.S. policy, I think you mischaracterize it, because our policy is to see success here in Africa. Now, there's no doubt that U.S. businesses also want to sell into Africa, because as President of the United States, I want to create some jobs in Africa as well. But my attitude is that the more successful African entrepreneurs are, then the more they're going to be purchasing and interested in purchasing U.S. goods. And conversely, when the economy in the United States is doing strong, then we're going to buy more from Africa, and everybody's standards of living can rise. But as you heard me say earlier, I completely agree with you that we want more investment and value creation here in Africa. Now, one thing we haven't spoken about, which I think is critical, is inter-African trade. You know, all too often it's easier to export, say, tea and coffee from East Africa, or flowers from East Africa to Europe, than it is to export it someplace else in Africa. And part of that is the legacy of colonialism, an orientation out of Africa rather than internal to Africa. Part of it is a lack of basic infrastructure. So port facilities, trains, rail, roads, and so one of the things that we're going to be very interested in is working with the African Union, as well as various regional organizations, to find ways that we can start linking up markets inside of Africa. Because particularly for new businesses, you know, if you're starting a business here in South Africa, then the best chance you have initially for export might be closer to home, one of the surrounding countries. If you have a business that you want to get started, and initially you've gotten your product popular inside of Uganda, the next step, before you think about selling to the United States, you might say to yourself, let me start selling some in Kenya, or let me start selling in Tanzania, or Rwanda. And so part of what we have to do is to find additional ways in which Africans can also trade with each other. Last point I will make, because it's related to trade and capacity building. You know, I just came, as I said, from Senegal. And one of the things that we were featuring was our Feed the Future program, and a food security alliance that we're creating here in Africa. We've already got 9 countries to join, and Senegal just determined that it was going to join as well. But we've already helped 7 million small farmers in Africa to pool their resources, access lower credit, link themselves together as one producer group so that they can market and sell more effectively. And we've seen those farmers increase their yields and their sales by 10, 20, 30, in some cases 50 or 100%. I met with a young woman farmer who had started off with 1 hectare, now has 16. She has been able to achieve enough growth that she's now bought a tractor. She's hired 8 people. Now, that's not what we ordinarily think of as business or entrepreneurship. But if you think about the number of Africans who are involved in agriculture and giving them the tools where suddenly they're getting better prices for their food, their crops, they've got access to a marketplace. They now are getting enough credit to be able to mechanize their operations. And now suddenly they're able to hire some people in their surrounding villages. You just suddenly seen a small business grow. And the next step, maybe then they start doing some small food processing. And next thing you know, now they're suddenly supplying these processed foods to a school. And next thing you know, they're supplying those processed foods to the whole country. And so not every business is going to be an internet business, an app. You know, I mean, I know that's where the young people are all that. I'm just going to create an app. I'm the next Facebook. That's great. And I hope some of you do that. But when we think of development of Africa as a whole, especially if we're thinking about broad-based development, then part of what we have to recognize is that a huge number of people inside of Africa are still in the agricultural sector. And the work that we're doing is trying to create capacity for those small farmers who are essentially small entrepreneurs from being to be successful, because if they've got more money in their pockets, now they can afford to buy your app. All right? So thank you very much for the question, Uganda. Appreciate it.
Mr. President, we're moving over to West Africa now, and we're going to take a question from Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, welcome, Mr. President, to Lagos, Nigeria, home to perhaps Africa's biggest youth population. I'm Maokwe Ogun for Channels Television here. And here with me in the studio are a selection of some of Nigeria's brightest and best. And I must tell you, Mr. President, they're mostly women, so you better be careful around them. And they say they're on the march and they have their question ready. Over now to you, Aisha.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Aisha Maina, and I represent 7 other people here. In acknowledging our challenges and our responsibility as the young leaders of Nigeria to accept our challenges and make the difference, we would like to thank you for your support to Nigeria and Africa as a whole. The largest resource in Nigeria is our human capital, and we would like to ask a two-pronged question. The first is, how can the United States deepen its investment in deploying technology that would develop our vast human capital as well as the education of her youth? My second question is two-pronged, sorry, Mr. President. Considering how long the war on terror has been on for, would you say that we are winning the war on terror, seeing that there are new terrorist groups developing in Africa, one of which is in Nigeria? Thank you.
Well, those are both great questions. Thank you. And before I answer the question, I just want to be clear. I am surrounded by opinionated women in my house all day long. So I've got good practice dealing with strong women. You guys haven't met Michelle, but you've probably seen her on TV. She's not shy. And Malia and Sasha, they're just taken right up after her. So every night at dinner, I'm surrounded. In terms of human capital and young people, I think there is no doubt that the most important investment any country can make, not just an African country, any country can make, is educating its youth and providing them the skills they need to compete in a highly technological, advanced world economy. Countries that do not do that well will not succeed. Countries that excel at training their young people are going to succeed, because these days businesses can go anywhere. And one of the key criteria for any business is, where can I find outstanding workers? Where can I find outstanding people to manage a plant or manage my sales force? And if you have countries with high illiteracy rates or limited skills, you're going to have problems. And I want to be clear that this is a problem in the United States, not just a problem in Africa. One of the main things that I'm spending a lot of time on is trying to push Congress to improve our early childhood education, because it turns out that children are are most susceptible to learning between the ages of 0 and 3. And so working with parents, particularly mothers, around reading to their children, proper nutrition, stimulating activities. Then when they get to school, making sure that our schools are prepared and redesigned for today, because a lot of the schools in the United States were first created during the agricultural era and aren't always appropriate for what's required today. And then on into what we call community colleges, which are 2-year colleges or 4-year colleges and universities. Somebody should have told my helicopter to quiet down while I'm talking. Yeah, so across the board, we're having to rethink education and workforce training. And one of the things that we want to do is to partner with a country like Nigeria and identify ways that we can provide direct value added, whether it's in helping to train teachers, helping to incorporate technologies into the education process. So, for example, one of the things that you hear across the continent is because a lot of Africans still live in rural areas, it may be difficult for them to access education and schooling once they get beyond a certain level. Well, are there ways in which we can pipe in essentially a university into a rural community? And suddenly you've got the lecturer right there without the same costs or obligation for a young person to take on when they go to travel far away from home in order to study. And so I think that there's some excellent ideas that sometimes we're doing country by country, depending on the country plan. But this is an area where I would love to get more input from young people in terms of what they think would work. And so part of the Young African Leaders Initiative may be to elicit additional ideas from those, particularly those who may be working in education and have a sense of what are the barriers right now for young people in order to succeed. Now, with respect to the so-called war on terror, there's no doubt that we've made some progress in dealing with some extremist groups. For example, core Al-Qaeda and bin Laden, that was based in the Fatah area between Pakistan and Afghanistan, that they have been greatly diminished. But what is also true is that in some ways the problem has metastasized. You have more regional terrorist organizations like a Boko Haram in Nigeria, espousing an extremist ideology, showing no regard for human life. And, although they may not have the same transnational capacity that some of the earlier organizations did, they're doing great harm in Africa and in the Middle East and in South Asia. People always talk about the terrorist threat to the United States or the West. But the truth of the matter is that the number of people who are killed by terrorist attacks in African countries or in Muslim countries or in South Asia far outstrips any deaths that are experienced by Westerners. It's typically people right there where these organizations are based that are most likely to be killed. When the Kenya embassy bombing happened, the overwhelming majority of people who were killed were Kenyans, not Americans. And so this is not just a problem for us, this is a problem for everybody. Now the question is, how do we address this this problem? It is my strong belief that terrorism is more likely to emerge and take root where countries are not delivering for their people, and where there are sources of conflict and underlying frustrations that have not been adequately dealt with. the danger we have right now, for example, in a place like Somalia, is that it's been 2 generations, maybe 3, since there was a functioning government inside of Somalia. Now, we've started to see actually some progress, in part because of intervention by African nations in Somalia to clear the space, to create the space for government. But you look at what's happening in Mali, for example, right now. Part of the problem is that you had a weak central government and democratic institutions that weren't reaching out as far into the country as were necessary. And we've got to build those institutions. A lot of what we talked about in terms of responsiveness and governance and democracy, those things become defense mechanisms against terrorism. They're the most important defense against terrorism. So I don't start with the attitude of a military solution to these problems. I think the more that we're giving people opportunity, the more that we're giving people education, the more that we're helping resolve conflicts through regular democratic processes, the less likely they are to take root. Now, having said that, there are some extremist groups that will not compromise or work through a democratic process. And we have to also be realistic about that. And what we want to do is partner with African countries to figure out how we can help. But I promise, this notion somehow that we want to somehow expand our military reach. I was elected to end a war. I've ended one. I'm now in the process of ending another one. Every few weeks, I go and visit soldiers who are your age, who've had their legs blown off in Afghanistan, or worse. Every week, I'm writing letters to the families of fallen soldiers. Sometimes I go to Arlington National Cemetery where our heroes are buried, and I hug those families and I feel their sobs on my shoulder. But this idea somehow that we want to get more involved militarily around the world is simply not true. First of all, it costs a lot of money. And the United States, just like every country around the world, has to think about its budget. And where we intervene, oftentimes it's not very effective because unless you've got a local population that is standing up against terrorism, we end up being viewed as interlopers and intruders. So in the Africa context, what we want to do is to build African capacity. We want the African Union and other regional organizations to build up the capacity to send in peacekeepers, to be able to nip terrorist cells that may be forming before they start and gain strength. And we can provide advice and training, and in some cases equipment, but we wouldn't.
Okay, meron pa, no? Pero mahinang ikot. Bakit hindi na marinig? Okay, sandali lang, no? Okay, wala na. Hindi na marinig po. Okay, mag-break muna tayo, hindi na marinig. Hindi na ako magalawatang umiikot. Ayan po, mag-break muna tayo, no? Okay.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay, wala na pong oras. Wala nang oras, no? Okay, ito na po mga suki. I-close na lang natin isang oras, 21 minutos at saka ilang segundo. 22 segundo, no? Okay, lecture o ang magandang lecture noon, yung tinutulungan niya ang mga African nation para benta ng mga produkto nila sa ibang bansa, no? Katulad ng Amerika. Yan ang kagandahan doon. Yun ang kagandahan doon. Ayan, kasi itong si President Barack Obama at saka si Michelle Obama magaling sa community organizing, no? Okay, so yan. Yung mga bansang sa East Africa, South Africa, West Africa, tinutulungan niya. Okay, mga produce ng produkto nila, binibenta po sa katulad ng example ng Amerika, no? Okay, ganun po ang turo niya sa mga Afrikanong mga kababayan, no? Okay, para mabenta ng produkto nila and then maka-generate ng employment, maka-generate ng income, part of marketing, no? Ayun. Kaya dito sa atin, kung magaling ka mag-market, okay, ganun. Buhay ang negosyo mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay, so overtime na, wala na tayong balita. Ito na po mga suki, no? Kung ka nakikinig tarhata, bukas ka mag-report, wala na oras, sobra-sobra na. Ayan. Ayan. Malakas, no? Okay, natanggal ang his. Ito naman nakapalit. Maingay na po mga suki. Malakas na. Ayan.
Awesome! 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 Awesome!
Okay, so palitan natin yung speaker at saka ito pang kuwan, no? Itong hinahawakan ko ito. Ayan. Okay, paalam ako kasi wala nang oras. Sobrang oras ni kinuha po ni former President Barack Obama, no? Okay. So, sige na. Tama na. Okay, nandito, paalam tayo yun. Nandito po sa paalam tayo dito po sa programa natin. Okay, Consolidated News natin balita. Okay, sa platform po ng ADLSNTV News Online. Okay, sa programa po Halo-Halo Special, Opinion Balita at iba pa. Okay, ay serbisyo publiko tinig ng mamamayan. At saka usapan ng mamamayan, ugnayan po ng mamamayan, mga suki, mga kababayan. No? Okay, so hurot na. Okay, tapos na. Okay, bukas ay babalik tayo bukas po ng umaga, no? Okay, wala nang oras. Wala tayong masamang tinapay, parati walang masamang tinapay sa kapwa. This has been abs naman lamang po, mga kababayan. Bye-bye na. Okay, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, advice ko sa pinsan ko, ay tama na, alis ka na dyan sa basel ko. Okay, para makarelax ka na, no? Okay, parehas na tayo may edad. Okay, tama na, pa-exit ka na. And then punta ka rito sa, kita-kita tayo rito, magkape-kape tayo rito sa Zamboanga. Ayan. Okay, tama na. Tama na paghanap buhay, sobra-sobra na insan. Ubaya mo na sa iba. Okay. Time mo naman ay hadji ka naman, mag-relax ka at sa kapamilyan mo, no? Okay, hadji ka naman. Pati misis mo, hadji na rin. Okay, i-close natin ang balita, no? Balik tayo bukas ng umaga. Ayan.
Bluetooth disconnected.